sometimes when I'm creating a new program or a new workshop, I'm trying to figure out why someone would want this. And it's an exercise that I think every course creator should do, to really just kind of free write for like 5 minutes or so. Why would someone want this? Ultimately, what a lot of it comes down to at a certain point is because they want the same success as you. You've been successful at this. I want that success, which is really saying, I want to be like you. By sharing a little bit about you and sharing the realness behind some stuff, people will buy you. It's not a fast sale, but there are ways of giving a little bit of insight about you through connection that will make someone buy. It's just not directly trackable.
What are some principles that the listener could take away that still apply to writing ad copy? So if you've wondered, is it just writing good copy that affects an ad? And then is that the only part of the funnel? Or do you also need to worry about connecting to your new leads inside of your email nurture sequence? And what is most important? Is it just going after the conversion? Is it relating to them on those personality traits that you have that they also could identify with? Is it about putting the right kind of case study in your email? Like, how do you build authority and do all of this? Well, I have a guest. He is a copywriter. And I've talked to other copywriters, and I just got finished saying to Justin Blackman that I love having copywriters on the podcast because I myself am so utterly horrible at the written word. And so I'm happy to have you, Justin, on the podcast. Dear listener, you're going to enjoy this episode because Justin has written ad copy. At one point, I think, Justin, you said that you were writing ad copy in an agency, like a Facebook and Instagram ads management agency, and you wrote ad copy for how many different people in 1 year? Was it 200 and something?
239 different people over the course of about 18 months.
That makes you an expert at learning and writing in other people's voice. That is an absolutely insane stat.
Yeah.
Wow. It was one of those things that I didn't realize how insane it was until I said it out loud to someone, and they're like, "What, you did what?"
I know. And so we're going to have to go into that. So dear listener, when I was chatting with Justin Blackman on Instagram, and after having seen him on a couple of other podcasts, online friends that I know, he made it a point to say that he believes in connection over conversion, and that the connection will eventually lead to the conversion. And we're going to talk about how to sound and write more like you in an authentic way. Let me read his bio. Justin Blackman is a brand voice expert who goes overboard. He's written for more than 429 people and dozens of brands, and created voice guides for industry experts, including some big names here: Amy Porterfield, Stu McLaren. I gotta love me some Stu.
Yeah, we like Stu.
He's great. Todd Herman and Danny Iny. He uses a process called the brand ventriloquism. Why is this word? Say this word for me, Jamie.
Ventriloquism.
All right.
I like that.
Don't say it 3 times fast. There's certain words I can't pronounce, like that linoleum, the stuff in the kitchen.
Linoleum.
That tile. Yeah, I just can't say that word either. But I can't say millennium, so there we go.
I don't think I ever knew that about you.
It's a very difficult word for me to say.
We've been married 16 years almost. I didn't know he couldn't say linoleum.
There's certain words I can't say. But yes, brand
ventriloquism.
To analyze and replicate the nuances that make your writing voice unique, and document it. He documents it so other writers can scale your content without sacrificing authenticity. He's also worked with top brands, including IHG hotels. We've stayed at some of those. Those are nice. 5-hour energy. Oh wow! At the fast, at the AM/PMs, right there on the counter, that little bottle
the gas stations.
Yeah, the gas stations. There we go. And Red Bull, when not embellishing his own bio, he runs workshops. It's great for writers at Brand Voice Academy. He helps founders identify the true essence of their brand, so writing becomes a snap, no matter who's creating the content. And all the people say he's pretty fly for a right guy.
That's awesome. I love that.
Great. Have you heard of Weird Al Yankovic? By the way, welcome to the show officially.
Have I heard of Weird Al? Yeah, it was the second tape I ever owned. It was Weird Al in 3D.
Thank you. Seems like we
You
grew
just
up in
aged yourself a little bit, Justin.
No, but
that's
that means
okay with
we're,
that.
we're with you.
we grew up
I'm
in the
okay
same
with that.
era then.
I'm a proud Gen Xer.
There we go.
Part of a
There we go.
generation that is forgotten while we're still here.
But we're still running things. We're still running the show. Justin, before we jump into these things, ad copy and just copywriting in general, can you give us a snapshot of your business as it stands today, this year so far? Like, where are you pulling your revenue from? What kind of offers do you have? More done for you, your program that you have, and then we want to kind of know a little bit about how you got to where you're at now. And then we'll dive into all the good copywriting stuff.
Yeah, so there are two arms to my business. The first one is there's Brand Voice Academy, which is the teaching arm, where I work with copywriters and basically help them understand how brand voice works, how to sound like any client, be able to kind of throw their voice to sound exactly like a brand or an agency or a person, and really mimic them and mirror their style. I also teach them how to create brand voice guides and have a couple of different trainings over there. And then I have justinblackman.com, which is my done for you service. And that's where I work with entrepreneurs to either help them punch up their writing, to lean into their style, and to create brand voice guides, which I do for both solo personal brands as well as corporate brands. So I can train their content teams and their writers to stay on brand. So one teaches writers, one helps document entrepreneurs and brands to really solidify the writing style.
And when you say brand voice guide, can you educate me a bit?
Sure. So most people are familiar with a brand guide, and you think of like these are your Pantone colors and your fonts and your logo choices. I do that, but with words. Because most people define their voice saying as like we're happy, we're casual, professional. But when you get a designer, it's like our Pantone color for blue is like 138692, whatever it is. I'm just making up. They get the exact shade of blue down to the pixel.
Yeah.
But with writing, they're saying write happy. That's like saying write in the color blue. There are about 362 different shades of blue.
Yeah.
Which one do you want me to write in? What I do is I put the same type of depth and analysis on someone's writing style as they do the colors and the branding. So I define how they write, and I define their brand voice, their approach, their writing style. And we define voice as vocabulary, tone, and cadence. So vocabulary is the level of writing that you're saying. Like if something is it big, is it grand, is it large, is it grandiose? They all mean the same thing, but what level of writing do we use? Cadence is the rhythm of your writing. Do you write short and choppy? Do you write like curt and abrupt? Or do you write long, flowy, wordy bird sentences that go on and forever and hardly ever use a comma and just have this gentle flowing feel to them, and you run out of breath before you actually reach the end punctuation?
This guy knows his words.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Is it
I was
short?
like, please take a breath.
Yeah, I was almost passed out right there. So, and then you've got the tone, which are the emotions in your writing. But rather than saying like happy, we need to figure out like what that means. Like happy can mean anything from like tranquil and balanced and serene, all the way to like giddy and jubilant and euphoric and ecstatic and sounded like a caffeinated kangaroo. What level of happy do you want?
Gotcha.
That's a really fantastic description of comparing the colors to the writing.
I've never heard that one before. And so what you're saying is by defining a brand voice like this, it really changes the writing that much?
Tremendously. Yeah. Yeah. Between the references and analogies that you might make, like if you're watching the video of this, I've got, Star Wars and Muppets and things like that. So those are going to be my type of references, as opposed to, some of the broader things that you might reference. So everything down to that, all the way to the like literally measurable elements of your writing voice that you can scale. And a brand voice guide will do that. It will help you throw your voice for writers, which is where brand ventriloquism comes in.
Nice. Throw your voice for writers.
Yeah.
Okay, you did just say that.
I did.
What does that mean?
Well, it was just, basically having someone speak for you, like a ventriloquist has their dummy, where
Gotcha.
it sounds
Yeah.
like it's got its own persona, its own style, but it's really the ventriloquist speaking.
Mhm.
Okay.
Copywriting, it's the copywriter is doing the actual speaking, but it sounds like someone else.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's it. It's being able to throw your writing voice.
Okay. I can get
So-
around. Yeah, I can get
Yeah. Okay, cool. I wanted to go back and ask on the Brand Voice Academy, is that a course or is that like a group coaching, or what does that look like?
For the majority of students are in the pre-recorded courses. I've got Write Like Anyone, I've got Voice Guide Creator, I've got another one that I'm working on, and then I've got Write More Personalitier, and those are pretty much copywriter specific. Write More Personalitier is 81 ways to add like punch, power, and pop to your everyday writing. That one can really go for everyone.
I want that,
I
which
like
means you should take the course.
Yeah, great.
Of course, it's funny. It's a few years old, but it's timeless. Like I actually watched it about 2 weeks ago, and I was like, "This is still a great course." So it's Write More Personalitier. It's silly, it's fun. It's just a good time. It's timeless techniques that like have been around since the Rosetta Stone for like how people can write.
Since the good old days when
Since the good old days.
all you had was copy and no media.
Mhm.
Back to the MySpace days. Back to
Right.
newspapers.
Like newspapers. Okay.
Yeah. And then I do have some live training programs which are more intense and more in depth. Those are my favorite ones to run. That's for like the true brand voice nerds.
Okay.
All right.
So a copywriter that also trains other copywriters. I got a question. This one came to mind. Why do you think it is, in very blunt terms, that the Stu McLarens and Amy Porterfields of the world are dropping serious coin on brand voice guides when someone that's making 50 grand a year, 100 grand a year isn't?
Well, part of it is because they have teams, and because their style and personality is so identifiable, it becomes almost more important for them for their copywriters to sound like them. You don't want it to sound fake. You don't want it to sound wishy-washy. Stu McLaren is one of the happiest, most energetic people in the world.
Yeah.
But it's a very distinct level that he's in. I mean, he's more at like the excited and giddy level, but he's not to like euphoric. Like,
True.
and you can't just be optimistic or hopeful. I mean, he is, but that's not enough. So even just a little bit off, it starts to fall apart. And be like, this doesn't sound like Stu. And it actually begins to raise some doubts in the readers. Like, what happened to Stu here? Like people can sense when the writing is off. So being able to identify his approach, his style, not just what he talks about, but how he talks, it's really important to maintain that integrity and authenticity for everything. Because it's not just about Stu doing the writing, it's about encapsulating all of his approach and his tone and Stu McLaren as a brand. Same with Amy Porterfield. Like we have to understand how she sounds, how she wants everything to come across, so it's authentic, even if she's not the one who's writing the copy. Because a brand doesn't mean that authentic doesn't mean it has to come from one person. It just means it has to be on brand.
Authentic doesn't mean it has to come from one person. It just means it needs to be on brand.
Yeah, because I feel like most people probably know at this point that someone with those big names, right? It's not them writing their own stuff, right?
Yeah, sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is.
Todd, they write a lot of their own stuff, but they can't possibly write all of it.
Right.
Or even just repurposing some of the content, changing one of their videos into an email or a podcast, like an announcement. That doesn't have to come from him. It's more tactical. He's got bigger things to do. He or she, they have bigger things to do. It's not effective for them to write everything. It's not realistic for them to write everything.
Right.
They are the visionary of the brand. They need to free up time to do that bigger thinking. It's okay. It's still authentic. if a copywriter who understands their message and their approach and their voice can step in and do this. And, I'm not just saying, I have a lot of clients whose names I can't say because they don't want that, but I'm fortunate enough that many of my clients are open about the fact that they have some content teams, and it's realistic. I think it's helpful to know that, like, if you see them everywhere, they're like, how do they show up everywhere? Well, it's because they have a team.
Yeah.
Right. They are not superhumans.
I think that's healthy though,
Yeah.
that people are transparent about that, because otherwise you kind of have like this false idea of what it takes and who you have to be to get to a certain level, and it's like, actually, couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, it's still them. It's just scaled authenticity.
Yeah, scaled authenticity.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
I didn't know those two words could exist with each other, but I like that.
Yeah.
When you figure out what your voice is, you're able to do it.
Cool.
And even with AI, like, I can get some really good stuff out of AI because I defined my voice extremely well. And the people who are saying that, like, oh, AI is terrible and it's just generic, it just means that you're using random things or generic things, like saying that your writing is friendly and casual.
Okay.
Those aren't voices. Those are personalities. Like, let's say you've got 6 friends. Let's say you've got Chandler, Phoebe, Joey, Monica, Ross, and Rachel.
They sound familiar. I wish those were my friends.
I like where you're going with this. Keep going.
So those are 6 friends, right? They all sound friendly, but they all sound entirely different. Some sound woo-woo, some sound, controlling.
My mind just thought of how you do it.
So some sound uneducated, some sound, sarcastic. Those are elements of a voice. Friendly is not a voice. Friendly is a personality. You need to actually understand what the voice is, what the writing is, to make it sound like you. It's much deeper than 3 adjectives and an avatar.
Wow.
That's really good.
That is so, for me, it's just, I realize how little I know when I talk to someone like you. Thank you.
I know a whole lot about very little.
Justin, can you tell us about your emotions wheel and where the listener can get it?
Yeah, so this all comes back to brand voice. I mentioned before how, like, friendly isn't a personality. Friendly isn't a voice, it's a personality. We need to get specifically granular on these things. I mentioned before that, like, happy can mean anything from jubilant and elated all the way to peaceful, to calm and balanced and tranquil. There are so many different levels of these things. If you want to write better, you actually need to get granular. You need to understand exactly what tone you're looking for, like the Pantone shade of blue. We want to understand your Pantone shade of emotion, not just write in the color yellow, but, like, we want, sunset yellow.
Canary, marigold.
Yeah.
Marigold. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Way to pull out a color. Yeah, that's my shirt.
Or Justin's shirt, yellow.
Yeah, C3PO gold. That's what we want. So it's understanding that nuance. So I have you are probably familiar with emotions wheels or tone wheels. It's primarily used in psychology, but I actually have one that I created for copywriters and for copywriting that's geared toward founders, which are the most prevalent the prevalent tones that show up in brands and in writing. And if you go to justinblackman.com/feelings, you can download a copy of the founder feeling wheel, and you'll get some emails that will help you identify some of the important tones. And obviously, it's also something that I offer if you need additional support on that.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Well, so how did you get started in copywriting? Did you study
And brand voice,
and
even.
brand voice? Yeah, like that specific.
So my background is in field marketing, and that's where I work for Puma, Red Bull, 5 Hour Energy, and I ran a lot of the sampling programs. So I was in charge of speaking to hundreds of thousands of people about certain brands, but they're all one-on-one conversations. And as I sort of aged out, like, I was working for Red Bull and I was on a college campus and someone called me sir, and I was like, oh, I can't do this.
Oh,
Like, oh, that hurt. So
I aged out.
yeah, so I moved to the corporate side where I started writing and training the sampling teams, and really helping develop the scripts. So that's where I started leaning into writing, and eventually just moved from speaking to the written word, and started doing websites and content, and uh, working for IHG, where I had to write for 14 different brands at the same time, like all their different hotels. And so each message I had to change 14 different ways.
Whoa.
Wow.
And that's where I really leaned into brand voice and started to understand and learn the nuance and the structures behind brand voice, and was just fortunate enough to get mentored by some great people. And I just went into it deeper than anyone ever should, and kind of became the go-to guy for brand voice.
Dang.
Wow.
Okay, I wonder if there's a listener like me who is now scared to write any email because I'm just kind of understanding like the breadth and the depth and just kind of the gravity of my words. How do I write that next email? What should be some things I should pay attention to?
Sometimes I break people's brains. The good news is I help put them back together.
Thank you
But-
for doing that for me and the listener.
I definitely have a couple of students who I teach this to, and they're like, "Oh my God, I don't know how to write anymore." I'm like, "You didn't forget. I just made it a little harder for you,
You just
which
raised the
when you
bar.
figure it out, it will be better." Yeah, it's the Dunning-Kruger. I just like pushed you off the edge. Just like make it drop
Okay, so
down.
let's make it very like at least I'll give a super straightforward question. Within the context of a weekly email that is doing double duty, and emails shouldn't do double duty, but so many of our emails do, where we are talking about a weekly podcast episode that aired, and also somewhere down the email transitioning to say, buy my stuff.
Yeah. So yes, there's
Not that we've ever done that before.
We've never done that before, but I think this is pretty typical, like very down to earth. Like, dear listener, if you can't relate, tell me in the YouTube comments that you cannot relate, or raise your hand and tell me you can relate.
So from a conversion perspective, I would say the right answer is to send 2 different emails. But
Yeah.
I understand that that's not always going to be an acceptable answer for people. And there are ways of doing it. Getting people to do 2 things at once is always going to be a challenge.
Mhm.
But you can preface it, like listen to a podcast versus buy my stuff is a little bit different. And I've done this before. It doesn't work as well as 2 separate emails. I will say that off the bat.
Okay.
But sometimes it's like, if you listen to this episode, it will help you explain why you want this.
Mm.
And sometimes people will click that and it'll open it up. And if you can then explain a little bit more about why they want it, sometimes that explanation can be enough to make someone buy right there or take a second action. Sometimes like they might open up the podcast, whether they listen to it or not is another story. If they just made the purchase and sometimes they want to justify it, sometimes they'll listen to the podcast. If they're on the fence, maybe they'll listen to the podcast. But ultimately, the conversion is the thing that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a conversion to listen versus to buy, you're splitting your goal, and your 50% is likely to get it. So kind of 2 different answers.
Hmm.
All right. Listener, you're tracking with me. So my next question then is going straight to the buy my stuff kind of email. When you and I were talking, you had said connection over conversion. Can you unpack what you mean by that?
Yeah. So getting someone to buy your stuff, it's easy if like you're selling sunglasses and people are saying, "Yeah, I need a new pair of sunglasses. Oh, here's some. Let me get it."
Mhm.
That's, sometimes there's filling a need, but then there's also a desire. And when it comes to like coaching, for instance, sometimes people will say, I would need to learn brand voice. Here's a class. I will take it. Other times people will start to know you. And I have people that join my courses because they're like, I want to learn from Justin. And you guys probably get that too. There are people that listen to you because you're you. And then there are people that listen to you for the information.
Yeah, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. So sometimes we buy stuff, sometimes we buy people. And I've actually been talking about this a little bit more lately. It's more like just talking off the record. I haven't been emailing about this, and there's some stuff in my journal, which I'm not going to share yet. But there's sometimes when I'm creating a new program or a new workshop, I'm trying to figure out why someone would want this. And it's an exercise that I think every course creator should do, to really just kind of free write for like 5 minutes or so. Why would someone want this? And then ultimately, what a lot of it comes down to at a certain point is because they want the same success as you. You've been successful at this. I want that success, which is
Oh.
really saying, I want to be like you. So
Mm.
by sharing a little bit about you and sharing the realness behind some stuff, people will buy you. It's not,
Mhm.
it's not a fast sale. It's not a quick sale. There are ways to do this quicker. I'm on the fence about whether or not I believe that should be done quickly or slowly. I understand the way business is to run. So, if we're looking for an ROI, we obviously want to speed that up. But there are ways of giving a little bit of insight about you through connection that will make someone buy. It's just not directly trackable. It's not
Mm.
necessarily a measurable result. But there's plenty of people, like if someone buys my course and I have an email that goes out and says, hey, let me know what's going on in your business that made you know that like now is the right time to buy. And very often I will get an email saying, oh, I knew for a year that I wanted to wait for you. I just was waiting for the right opportunity.
Sounds familiar.
Mhm.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
And it's because of something that you wrote that had nothing to do with business, but it was an insight into you that was relatable. That was the thing that made someone want you.
Mm.
Showing accessibility versus authority, or leading with your outlook. Like Stu McLaren, like that is one of the happiest men I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
there's just something like, you know what? I really need levity in my life right now. And I want to learn and I want something fun that I know I'm going to enjoy with like, break dance intermissions, or dance break intermissions. That's Stu.
Uh-huh.
And, as opposed to some of the other people who I've written for, it's like, man, I just want to know, I want to learn from someone who is detailed and meticulous and just is a higher level of expertise and wants experts to teach experts. That's someone more like Miracy and Danny Iny. Then there's Amy Porterfield, who's like, I want someone to teach me who's more nurturing, a little more hands-on, a little more empathetic, a little more parental. Well, that's Amy Porterfield. Those are three different people who all teach very similar things, but
Mm.
you're going to be attracted to someone's persona
Hmm.
and their character and their personality more so than their material.
How does a person like me, or maybe the listener who doesn't feel as comfortable with the written word, get good at writing in a way that expresses their persona, like would be expressed when they show up on video? And what I'm trying to say is, like, I do great on video and I'm myself on video, but my writing does not sound like me at all. Yet so many people read my emails, and I know for a fact that people connect with me in real life and therefore on video.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different ways, and it depends on your level of writing. The fact is, the way that we're taught to write at school is academic. That works well for textbooks. It works well for tests. That doesn't work well for social media. You see a long, like a 5-sentence paragraph, the way that we're taught in full sentences, the way that we're taught to write in English,
Hmm.
it doesn't work for email because it's not mobile optimized. It's not that our attention spans are short, but if we see a chunk of text, we're like, you know what? I need to focus when I read this. I'm going to come back to it. And then you're never going to come back to it, especially on social. You don't, no one scrolls back. You scroll down. So it's got to be captivating enough. It has to be intriguing enough. It has to have a right hook. There are copywriting principles that you can learn. But like, for instance, I'll just say that the average sentence length in English is 15 words. Written is 15 words.
Okay.
So, that's pretty much a complete sentence that it doesn't matter what that looks like. Just know that it's 15 words. Most copywriters hardly ever write over 11 sentence words. So like we just go shorter. We go choppier. We do one thought per sentence.
Mhm.
So we're taught in academics to write complete sentences with, subject, predicates, all that stuff. Copywriting breaks that rule on a very consistent basis. It's just easier to digest.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of strategy to that. But the fact is, you have to write more, and looking at something with curiosity. One of the ways that I started to really understand writing a little bit more was when I read something that was interesting, was like, what did they do there? And then I just started analyzing it. And that was honestly my introduction into it. I know that's not a perfect answer, but there's really no best way to do it other than just read really good writing and mirror it until you develop your own style.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely relate. I still think of not just my high school teachers, but even my college professors. When I had to do writing, it was always the same thing, like red pen everywhere. And they would be like, okay, Kwejo, this should not be an intro. This should be at the end of your paper. And this should be up here. And this should be down there. And then they're just like drawing all these lines. It was like every time I wrote it, it was so horrible. And to this day, when I try to write for social media or in an email, like it just sounds robotic and I just freeze up and I'm like, I'm done.
All right.
I mean, to be fair, like when we learned to write, like you were saying, it's academic writing. I mean, at that time, no one knew the power of social media and what that was going to look like and how to write for that. Like that's not what we were taught. We were taught to write essays and
some people knew.
Yeah.
Al Gore knew when he invented the internet.
That's right. Al, he knew it.
Right.
I would say this. So like that type of instruction, it's like it's ingrained in us. It's like this is gonna sound bad, but it's like small t trauma. It's stuff that like it's part of us that we're still writing to impress that teacher.
I am.
Yeah.
Dang it, I am.
Okay, love, you can heal from this.
We are. It's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay. But the fact is, like, it takes a long time to be able to let that go. Or I would say this, write, if that teacher's in your head, your goal is to get a C-.
Oh.
Then you're going to get better copy.
That's even more painful.
I just can't do it.
As the son of an immigrant father, C-, that means spankings. Like there's no room for C- in an immigrant household.
You want to write spank-worthy copy. There's your headline.
I'm like,
the key to spank-worthy.
Don't take the bait.
Who knew an episode on copywriting would just like bring out this childhood trauma?
I know, right? I knew I need to have Justin on the podcast.
Right. Okay, so what I was going to ask, this was all supposed to lead into, was what is some outdated advice then of personal brands?
So, all right. So this is actually where my shirt comes in. It says feeling quite gross. So there was this trend going on for probably 2020 to 2023. It seems like it's kind of dying a little bit. Well, actually, there's two. The first one I was going to talk about is weaponized vulnerability. Like after Brene Brown said, like the power of vulnerability and all this stuff, people just got too carried away with it. The crying on LinkedIn, the pity parties, the showing, just like marketing pain or trying to make something painful. Where it's like, yeah, dude, get over yourself. Like there was some of that. And it was just, to me, that was a major turnoff. It was when private lives started becoming way too public. I thought that was awful. Personally, I'm happy to see that the trend has moved away. And this might be a little off topic, but I think it's important to say, like, even if you go on LinkedIn, like the about section, people are like, as a proud parent of 3 people and, someone who has ADD and, from this country or that country, that's the first thing that they lead with. Now, here in the States, if you're applying for a corporate job, I'm not allowed to ask you, are you a parent? Do you have any medical disabilities? Where are you from? I legally cannot ask you those questions because it will affect my view of you. It absolutely will. Like it can't not. It will subconsciously happen. The fact that we're leading with all of this stuff in most of our bios, yes, it is a good point of connection, but honestly, I think that sometimes it goes too far.
Good point. Yeah.
So honestly, like that's one of my things that I feel like boundaries are good. And when it comes to my shirt, the feelings are gross. So it's kind of like the pretty fly for a right guy. It's a pun. Feelings are gross. They are everything that you have accumulated throughout the course of your life. It is your gross earnings. Your brand is your net. It's you minus deductions. It's putting boundaries around certain things. So not everything shows up. It's everything that you've accumulated versus what should be in your brand. The thing that I help people with, the same with brand voice and all of this stuff, is putting those boundaries to figure out what your net is that's actually showing up in your business. It's understanding what's real, what's not what's real, but what's here. Like watching this video, you see here to here. You have no idea what's beyond these walls.
Or what you're wearing on the bottom.
Yeah, you don't know it's down here. I mean, it's fun.
Ends there.
Yeah. I've got spiders dangling from the ceiling right there. You can't see it.
Right.
It's true. I love
Gross versus net.
Feelings are gross. I didn't even get that until you said it, but I like it.
Yeah.
And I also enjoyed back in the pandemic days and the depth of the pandemic when we would just like on these Zoom calls pan our computers around so we all could like see what our space truly looks like rather than the curated monkey astronaut and the eyesight poster.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Like there are times when it is absolutely great to show that stuff. You want to have your cat and your kid show up on camera, go for it. I don't have a problem with that. But there are some things that aren't necessarily representative of your brand, which it's okay to acknowledge them, but it's not necessarily that we should lead with them. And even as a personal brand, you're still selling something, and it's okay to share. I believe in translucency. I don't believe in full transparency. I don't want you to be able, it's not a window, it's a tinted wall. You can see some stuff. It's just not see-through. It's not entirely see-through. It's cloudy.
Translucent.
I believe in translucency, not transparency.
That's transparency. Okay.
That's scalable.
So, yeah, I was going to ask, like, in part of this, do you also mean like where people were hitting pain points too hard?
So
that's not what you're saying.
That there can be. So from a copywriting perspective, there's the problem, agitate, solution. It's, I know you're dealing with this and it feels like this. And it's twisting the knives, but there are different levels of it. It can go too far. Sometimes from a conversion perspective, that actually works better. But from an empathy standpoint and from a humanity standpoint, everyone's line is going to be different. And I've worked with certain people who like, oh, I don't even want to like mention pains. I just want to be full sunshine and rainbows. And that can work for certain people. But there are other people that are like, yes, twist the knife, make them bleed, make them die. and it works. It's a Dr. Burns mentality or Mr. Burns mentality. It works, but it's also a turnoff to certain people. So it depends on the audience. It depends on what it is. And so that was the thing, like with some of the Facebook ads that I wrote. Everyone has different lines. There are certain things that I would never say, that I absolutely refuse to say. I would never say you can't afford not to do something. And a lot of people said like, oh, put this line in there. I won't write it. You want like, I'll give you the copy. If you want to put that in yourself, that's fine. I will literally never write those words. You can't afford not to. I don't know what someone can afford. I don't know what they can't afford. It's not for me to say what they can't afford to. Plus, I'm not the one who's making the final deliverable, and I don't know if it's truly gonna work for them. If it's between, learning how to write copy versus paying your electric bill, pay your damn electric bill. Like that's keep
the lights on.
Yeah. And that was something that I'm not the one who came up with that boundary, but I heard it and I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm sticking with that. But everyone has different boundaries. There are absolutely some people who have refused to write for. When I see their work, I'm just like, this feels like predatory and opportunist, and I don't like that. But there are also a ton of great people who, some people like the empathy is good, but empathy also means acknowledging pains. And
Mm.
so as far as talking about the pains and the agitation and things like that, it works. It's just finding your own comfort level and also understanding what your audience likes. And sometimes you actually have to write a little bit more than you're comfortable with. Like, just not a lot. I'm not saying go gory, but
Mhm.
acknowledging and truly describing what their pains might feel like. Sometimes it's actually an act of compassion, because it's saying, if you're providing the solution for it, if you're genuinely providing the cure for it,
Mhm.
then it's okay to talk about.
Right.
Agreed.
So,
That's good. Yeah.
Agreed.
Is this a good place for you to mention that
Yeah.
that word that you
yes.
said before we hit record?
That word was bouncing around in my mind, and I was like, we have to talk about it right
we
now.
must get this on the
linoleum?
Not linoleum. No.
Not that word. No.
And not ventriloquism. We already covered that.
Right. The listener's like, what is the word?
What is he gonna
What
say?
is the word? Right?
And this is where we break for an ad.
I was just gonna
Today's
say
episode.
Oh man, the old TV days when you had to watch commercials. So that word just was so funny to me when I heard it, because it makes so much sense. The word is broetry. How did you use the word broetry? How did you use the word broetry?
Broetry. So back when I was writing Facebook ads, broetry was the thing. That was that really long copy of filled with really short sentences.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of this? Line break. What about this? Line break. And when you do it, this happens. Line break. And then this and this. And it was funny, and it was punchy, but they were like 123 lines long.
Ooh.
Where you just kept scrolling and scrolling. And LinkedIn took over doing this for a long time. It seems to be changing a little bit right now. But it's basically, it looks like it's poetry. It looks like you're writing haikus over and over and over. But it's usually kind of scammy, a little sketchy type of copy that has this certain feel to it that's can be very off-putting for some people, or it can be like, hell yeah, this is for me, to other people. And it was very much used in bro marketing.
His hell yeah just sounded like Johnny Lawrence from, we just finished watching Cobra Kai, by the way.
Nice.
Season 6. If you love that kind of stuff,
that's his like.
they closed it off super well. It was great.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, but that's actually a great example of brand voice gone too far. Like, Johnny Lawrence is a great character who's there's like Ralph Macchio. I just forgot his name. What's the character?
Daniel?
Daniel
LaRusso. Yeah.
Daniel LaRusso was influenced by the 80s. Johnny Lawrence is still stuck in the 80s. He's still listening to a Walkman. He becomes a caricature of the 80s. Whereas Daniel LaRusso is a brand voice of the 80s. He's someone that experienced some good things and highlights and still has references. The show itself has some throwbacks and it has acknowledgments of the 80s, but it's not stuck in the 80s.
Mhm.
Johnny Lawrence is a caricature. And that's what happens when you go too far with brand voice, when you if a writer like picks up one certain element of it, like, look, I've got Muppet references. I'm not opening up every emails with any type of like Jim Henson or childhood PBS references. It's not like, hey, you guys, like, I'm not doing that with every email. I'm not dropping Kermit gifs and Miss Piggy everywhere. I do it on occasion. But when you do it too much, it begins to get off voice, and it's like, this has gone too far. This doesn't sound like me. Putting those boundaries on the feelings, the gross first net, putting those boundaries around it allows it to scale.
Okay. All right. I'm tracking with you.
Yeah. That's good.
So I want to ask about some of the principles, the timeless principles that still apply, that you could share, that you picked up when you were writing ads for, in 18 months, you said over 230, what was the exact number?
239 people in 18 months.
239 different businesses, people that you were writing ads for, and you became an expert at writing, or what was the other phrase? Throwing your voice?
Throwing your voice. Yeah.
Throwing your voice.
So social media, I heard this description of it a long time ago, and it stuck with me. It's basically, they said, we don't go to social media to make decisions. We go to social media to avoid making decisions. And I love that line.
Accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Right.
the way that I started writing ads was I would just scroll through my newsfeed and I would look at my friends and their copy, and the stuff that got me, like, and where I kept reading it, like you have to train your brain to do this, but what are your friends writing? What looks like it belongs there? Anytime I started with like, dear business owners or attention business owners, I'm like, nobody wants that. And
Yeah.
I know that like an ad can do that. It works well on the radio because it perks you up. But the stuff on social media, if I see something that looks like an ad, I don't want to interact with it unless it's calling out a specific thing that I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
And like I saw an ad that did really well recently about like how to learn Spanish. And it wasn't like, are you trying to learn Spanish? It would be like, and it would start with, all right, the hardest thing about learning Spanish is blank. And it'd be like, yeah, okay. It just looked natural. Here's something they don't tell you when you're trying to learn Spanish. Ever try to like still hearing, like, talk about some of the problems that are there. Why is it that, or the simplest line to say in Spanish is spell the word socks, SOCKS, which is, this is what it means in Spanish. Like just sort of learning these little hooks and tricks that get you and they interest you and they intrigue you because they look like they belong. They're kind of offering something of value, and even if it's just straight up entertainment right off the bat. And to me, that was the most effective ad. Going back to some of the Gen X references, one of the best ads that I ever wrote was for a coach that it was a female empowerment coach, and she helps women own their voice. And I just started off, the opening line was, "Nobody puts baby in a corner." That line killed because it was for like Gen X women. It ad did so incredibly well to the point where like everyone was like, "Holy hell, what did we do?"
Wow.
But it was that. It was just this little point of connection. It wasn't like, "Dear quieted woman," it wasn't that. It wasn't acknowledging a pain. It was acknowledging who they are. And that just, to me, that's what always worked best.
Dang. It wasn't acknowledging a pain. It was acknowledging who they are. Look at your friend's social media and write things that feel like they go there.
Yeah. Some of my best hooks, I remember, like, my friend who is a copywriter, is a great writer. He started with a post. He's like, okay, this can't be right. And then he was just like talking about like his electric bill. And I remember I just copied that line, okay, this can't be right. And I started an ad with it, and it did gangbusters because it just developed intrigue right off the bat.
What can't be right?
Okay, this can't be right. Because when you're trying to start a business and they tell you to put yourself into the brand, everything becomes content. And now I got to start talking about my kids rather than what I do, rather than my solutions, rather than my business. I don't want to talk about my kids. I want to talk about work. I want to talk about success and challenges and things like that. That's a hook. Like,
It is a hook.
Yeah.
I might have to steal that hook.
I know, right?
I stole it from, I'll give him credit, Jimmy Parent, my copywriter friend. Like, I stole that hook from him and I used it dozens of times and it worked really, really well.
Right?
Okay, this can't be right.
Yeah.
We're
suddenly going to see all these ads come out. Okay, this can't be right.
Right?
After this episode releases.
They only heard it from this podcast. That's cool. That's cool.
Sometimes being helpful is not always the way that we're defining it. And what I mean by that, it's sometimes the connection is there. Sometimes we just need to give people a simple answer, and that works. There is no best way universally. It looks different for everybody. It depends on your situation. It depends on your background. It depends on your audience. And not just, I don't mean your audience as a whole. I mean the specific person who you're speaking to. So I'm not a big believer in best practices. I believe that they're completely subjective. And all I want to say is Han shot first. So I don't know, man.
All right. No, that's fine. When we meet up in Maine, it's going to be cool to meet you in person.